This episode has been brought to you from the DGMS Studios, home of Don't Get Me Started, Lethal and Mully Live, and Surftown. Found at Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Hello and welcome to Don't Get Me Started. It's the mother of all podcasts with Keith and Lee. Hi, I'm Lee.
And I'm Keith.
Hello and welcome to another episode, Don't Get Me Started, with Keith and Lee. We're in the DGMS studios this morning and I'm looking across at my old mate Mully. Keith, how are you today on this moody Tuesday?
Well, first of all, I am well. Thanks for asking. What about your own good self?
I'm very well, mate. I'm just waiting and the anticipation of a certain cyclone called Alfred.
Well, I love the name Alfred. You know, it's just so solidly male, but also so quintessentially ancient. I mean, who calls their boys, their newly arrived male children these days, Alfred? They get names like River and Rusty and, well, not Rusty, you know, but, you know.
Yeah, I've got a grandson, River. I've got a grandson, Vander.
Forrest. I've got, I know, Forrest. Alfred. I love it. Geez, I just had a crash in the studio.
Yeah, I wonder what that was, Mully. Was that your phone?
No, I think the cyclone's hit already. And I think this, how did you describe today?
A moody Tuesday.
Moody Tuesday. Now, can you tell me why you said that?
Well, this is what's happening. You know me, Mully. I'm always up to date with news. I'm always on the internet searching, trying to differentiate between disinformation and information and misinformation. It drives me nuts. And now there's this massive onslaught of the cyclone, Alfred, going to come onto the Queensland coast. So I did a little bit of research on that. And you would probably know, because you've been on this planet more than 50 years.
Yeah, a little bit.
Now, the last one to cross the coast, Queensland, was called Zoe in 1974. Now, we're waiting for this cyclone to hit. The panic that is starting on the internet and the supermarkets is crazy. And the information coming from the Sunshine Coast Daily is out of control. Now, you would have got, the same as I had this morning on my mobile, a tropical cyclone alert informing us that maybe without power for 3 days, you need to stock up on water. All good information, all fine. But the panic that has set in is incredible and it feels very moody out there. Even though, Keith, look out the window, it's a beautiful sunny day.
I know, that's what's doing my head in. There's hardly any wind, just a mere zephyr caressing those beautiful green trees out the back of the studio here. The sun is just beautifully bathing us in this bright sunshine. You know, bluebirds are flying and singing across the sky. And it's
another beautiful day.
Hang on out there, nature. The apocalypse is coming. It's coming. Don't you know we're going to go towards the end of the world? And, you know, you're putting on this beautiful display of tranquil nature.
That's what it feels like out there. It feels very moody. That's why it started up the podcast with how are you on a moody Tuesday. Now, the last cyclone that came across was Cyclone Debbie. That came in near Alley Beach, 28th of 3rd, 2017. That was a Category 4. This is only a Category 2. So it's been so played up like it's a Category 5.
Yeah, I know. I have a little bit of a theory about this, and that is that the governments have been, if there's any sort of mistake, a misstep, a disaster, or a major problem, people love to blame the government. Oh, the government should have done this, or the government didn't want us. Or why doesn't the government come in and save us? The government can do more to help. They just whinge, complain. And I think governments have woken up and they say, all right, here's a possible disaster coming. Let's tell everybody to do this. So they've got their bums covered so that people can't come back later and say, oh, my home was flooded or the roof was blown off and the government didn't tell me. Well, yes, they did. They've just been flooding us with all these warnings, these alerts. But the thing is, Lee, our homes, because we live in a subtropical climate, our homes are actually built to a certain standard to withstand very strong wind. Okay, very likely that if full force of this thing comes and hits us where we live, there will be some structural damage. But I think people are more concerned about the supply line.
It is.
You know, the food, the water, the toilet rolls, the normal things.
All gone.
Yeah, they panicked about, you know.
Supermarkets.
I don't get, I get it with water, but what about toilet rolls? You know, like it's a modern convenience. For hundreds of years, if thousands of years, people have been washing their cheeks whenever they've made an organic deposit. They didn't have to have paper, arguably is not very efficient or hardly sanitary anyway. You smear the thing. Wouldn't you be better off just jumping in the shower and giving your bum a good wash?
Well, sometimes you just take the spade, mate, dig a hole in the backyard,
That'll
do your
work.
stuff, grab a few leaves and off you go.
That'll
Now,
work.
this is madness, and I've been reading certain articles and it's all saying the same. It's a panic. Now, feels that most people are panicked over the little things, where before, I loved Australian culture where it said, oh, don't worry, mate, she'll be all right. And 9 out of 10 times it is, until you get that one. Now, I've got another little interesting fact of why it's called Alfred. It wasn't originally going to be called Alfred.
I think I know this, but tell me.
It was going to be called Anthony. And the reason they called it Alfred is because they didn't want to confuse that with our Prime Minister.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was thinking in a different direction. Because our Prime Minister might be be facing a furious storm of his own coming into the federal election, which is supposedly next month.
Which is very interesting. Now, they obviously alternate names between male and female. So the next cyclone, which will be next year, unless we get another one, which I doubt it now this time of year, but it's going to be called either
Bertie,
nearly Bianca,
or
here we go, this little trivia question for you. The name of the ex-Prime Minister's wife, Bob Hawke.
Hazel.
No, Blanche. Sorry, her surname. It would be her surname.
Yeah, well, he's had two wives.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, he did too. His second wife.
Yeah, her name, yes, Blanche.
Blanche. So that's what's going to be called next time.
Oh.
It's very, very interesting. They alternate it between male and females. But anyway, it's a big cyclone. It's off the coast. It's making surfers so happy up and down the coast. As you know, Keith does another podcast called Surf Town, and the surfers are so excited because Keith's posting all these fabulous photos of the waves, especially in Noosa, where it's flat as a pancake and it's going off. You've been down there?
Yes, flat as a pancake a lot of the time throughout the year, but at the moment the cyclone swells are hitting the points and the waves are terrific. And actually I've got a little session lined up myself. I'll be paddling out very soon.
No.
Absolutely, yes.
Not today.
Why not?
Are you sure? You're up for this, Molly?
Yeah. Actually, I do have a story. Years ago, there was a cyclone pushing in some big swell, and I jumped off the rocks at Boiling Pot, which is way out the end of National Park, and I totally didn't read it. And this rip just took me straight out into the middle of Laguna Bay. And it was after work, so I got down there about an hour or so before twilight. And all of a sudden, I was being pulled out towards the outer... There's a big reef out there. You don't see it because it's deep, and you have to have big swells before anything breaks upon it. I was heading towards this thing. And when you're in a rip, you have to paddle across it, not against it, which I started to do. And I was making some progress, but I was still being pulled diagonally across into the middle of the bay.
How long ago is this?
This would have been about 15 years.
Oh, gee.
But no, I wasn't panicking. I could see that I was getting out of the rip, but I was being pulled well away from where the waves were, the surf was. And so once I finally got out of the rip, I was well away from the shore, and I had to paddle all the way into shore in this big cyclone swell. And just as I got to the beach break, as I was coming to the beach break rather, twilight was coming into moving towards the evening. So I had to negotiate my way in, these big swell crashing on the sand in semi-darkness, which I managed to do. And, that was another close escape.
Now, for people who are listening that don't know what a rip is, surf, Keith will explain what a rip is.
Well, it's a current of a raging current of movement of water, strong movement of water, quite deep, that's going in one direction. And it can often pull you away from where you want to be. And so if you're an inexperienced swimmer, you can be caught in one of these rips, these currents, very close to the shore actually, and they can take you away from the sand, safety, and you get in all sorts of trouble. But for a lot of Aussies that have grown up in the surf, that we're used to them and we just know what to do. You just don't panic. You semi-go with it, you paddle or swim across it.
Or you're like me, fresh off the boat, 30 odd years ago, gets caught in one and panics and nearly drowns. So it's a worry. They're powerful.
Yeah, they are powerful. You can't go against them.
No.
You have to swim across it, and you also have to know that as you're swimming across it, it's taking you in the direction it's going. So which is often well away from where you want to be. A lot of them on the open beaches run parallel to the sand. Some of them go straight out to sea, but they don't go far. The ones that go out to sea don't go out a long way. They just take it easy, relax, swim across it. You'll come out of the rip, it will release you, then just swim back to shore.
So it's the Cyclone Alfred meant to make landfall this Thursday, Friday. They're 90% sure that it's going to hit around Brisbane. So we have to take control of all the loose materials around our backyard because there'll still be winds. It's a Category 2, so it's still powerful.
Yeah. Well, you don't mess around with strong winds, but we'll survive. I've been through cyclones, I've been through typhoons, and haven't been through hurricanes. hurricanes. What else have I been through? Floods? No earthquake?
Yeah, since being in Australia, I've come across a few of those. Yeah, you do get used to it, but you have to be prepared for them.
But like I always say, Lee, summer in Australia, the elements go mad. Always are going to get a fire, a flood or a cyclone somewhere in Australia during summer.
What a country.
Yeah, and we survive.
We survive. But I appreciate all the services that help around town and throughout the coast. Good on you, fellas. Now, I would like to talk about a certain subject that's been playing on my mind for a while, and the subject is called sacrifice.
Oh, that's a deep one.
Yeah, so a lot of people would say they've sacrificed their time, given up time for work, study, other activities. They've sacrificed relationships, ending or giving up relationship with friends, family, or romantic partners. Their career, giving up their personal time to advance their career. Their peace. When people say, I sacrifice my time, relationships, career, I sacrifice my peace. Do they really sacrifice? The word sacrifice. How does that sit with you? What have you sacrificed? I know you sacrificed your time coming in this morning, or have you?
Lee, I'm absolutely gobsmacked. I've come in here this morning. The sun's out. We're sitting down. We're talking, having coffee. We're having a good time. We're just talking about the weather. And all of a sudden you go bang into sacrifice and you just rolled out all those meanings. I'm a little bit aghast.
Well, it's the other thing.
Can you go through the last game?
We can sacrifice sleep. We sacrifice our urges. So-called. We sacrifice our stress and our hobbies. Sacrifice. The word has really been playing on me for the last week and a half. And I
Obviously.
I said this to you a couple of days ago. I said, I think we should do one on sacrifice. I've read a few little instances. So like time, here's the most common one. I sacrifice my time. So if you wasn't doing something else, would you be sacrificing that time for something else? Or are you labeling it sacrifice because you want to be thought of more, or as a martyr, or self-sacrificing, selfless, charitable? What is it?
Well, geez, Lee, I don't know. I'm thinking this. Sacrifice to me denotes that you give something up that costs you.
But does it cost you?
Well, let's get to that in a moment.
Because that's where you label it. This is why I like to get this out. I hope that you're enjoying the podcasts and the content that we're bringing to you each week. I want to take a moment to invite you to support the show. Your contributions help us continue creating high-quality episodes, bringing in exciting guests and exploring the topics you love. Every bit helps, whether it's a small donation or signing up for our Patreon account. By supporting us, you're not just helping keeping the lights on, you're becoming part of our community and helping us grow. To show our appreciation, we offer exclusive perks, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more for our supporters. So if you love what we do and you want to see us thrive, please consider signing up at buzzsprout.com/don't get me started. Support the show. Thank you for being part of our journey, and let's keep the conversation going.
Well, some of those things that you mentioned, I don't know that you really are sacrificing. I mean, you have to do some things in life. Some things in life are essential. For example, if you go home and it's untidy and you clean it up, which is going to take a considerable amount of time, is that a sacrifice? Now, it might be if the football's on television and you want to watch it, or the surfing's on television and you want to watch it. So it seems to me that sacrifice is when you give something up.
Or something else or somebody else.
Yes. You give something up that's important to you.
So
either for gain for yourself or for somebody else.
Sure. So sacrifice, though, time, relationship.
That's weird. How could you sacrifice relationships? Actually, you could.
Ending or giving up relationship with friends, family, or romantic parts. Now, it could be reasons why. I mean, I know that I've sort of stepped aside from so-called friends, but I realised that they really weren't friends until certain things happened. And then you go, okay, I'm not going to go down this path anymore. But have I sacrificed that relationship?
No, you haven't. Well, let's go back to romantic novels and let's look at your
romance.
Your English ones, where
Mills and Boon. You're really familiar with Mills and Boon.
Did I tell you about my grandfather?
Yes, you did. Yes.
Oh God. Well, that was just mind blowing. Anyway, your society, your old English society, is riddled with class. Now let's go with what has happened in a lot of famous stories coming out of England. A man from a rich family or a lady from a rich family falls in love with somebody from the working class. Not just a solid working class, but a pretty low working class. Not a dysfunctional life or family, a good family, solid, but they're just basic workers. So somebody high up the class ladder falls with somebody on the lower rung of the class ladder.
I get it.
Now, that person up the top says to their family, let's say it's a guy who's fallen in love with Elizabeth down the bottom. So, and the guy at the top, let's call him Alfred. And Alfred comes from property and substance, finances and money, and he falls in love with Elizabeth. But because he comes from property, he's probably got a title. He might be a duke or something. I don't know what you have over there. The title's not very high.
What do you mean? What What do I have over there? I'm not there, Mully. I'm here.
I don't know what you used to have over there, but, you know, you have titles that come with privilege and land and all this sort of stuff, right? So let's call him Duke Alfred.
All right.
And he goes to his father, did the English have Grand Dukes?
Oh, yeah, Grand Duke of York. I think he had
there you go.
10,000 men.
All right, so Duke Alfred goes up to Grand Duke Christopher and says, Papa, I'm in love with Elizabeth. And Papa goes, oh, that mere farm girl, that labourer, uneducated. But she's stunning. She's gorgeous. She's got everything except an education and a title. Duke Alfred says, Papa, I love her dearly. She is my one. And Dad says, well, you can have her, but if you do, you're going to be disinherited. You won't have your title. You won't inherit this land, this castle. He goes, all right, I want the land. I want the castle. So he sacrifices his love. Actually, as I'm telling that story, I have a friend that happened to him.
Right.
He went to his father and said, I want to marry such and such and such and such. This is going back a long time ago. And the father said, well, he said, you can marry her if you like. He said, but you'll become a Catholic. You're out of the family and you'll be poor. You won't inherit the money.
But it's not a sacrifice, is it, really? It's a threat. So he's been threatened.
Well, in my case, my friend decided not to become a Catholic and remained rich. He married somebody else. But going back to the fictional scenario that I've painted out there, Alfred sacrifices the title, privilege, money, castle, land, estates to go and be with Elizabeth. And guess what they did? They eloped to France and they opened up a bakery and it was a success and they had 8 children. And then because it was a successful bakery, they opened up another and another and another. And they had a wonderful life.
Well, there you go. So there is a happy ending.
I should write romantic novels, shouldn't I?
You should. What I've got here is I put life is full of instances where we all observe self-sacrifice. It's a compelling and profound human trait that often leaves us in awe and deep admiration. But does it?
Well, it depends.
From a mother forfeiting her career to look after her family, to a soldier laying down his life for his country, or children sacrificing their own wants and desires for their aging parents. Self-sacrifice is truly an act of love and courage. How does that sound to you? It's not sacrifice, it's of love and courage.
A lot. There's so much in this that you're rolling out. It's hard to know what to jump on here, but you're saying we admire people who sacrifice. Well, just going back to my fictional scenario with Duke Alfred and the commoner Elizabeth, do we admire him that he gave up privilege, title?
Well, a lot of them would go, well, you're a bloody idiot. And others would go, oh, how...
Yeah, but the romantic people would go, oh, it's so lovely. Well, it's a sweet story. But do they admire him? Would you?
Would I?
Yeah.
He laid everything down for love?
Yes.
Would I admire him? I think, yes, I would. I would say for love. If he goes, well, I sacrificed everything that I had, I would then feel, no, I wouldn't agree with that.
I think I would admire him to a degree. I wouldn't put him up into sainthood, but I'd say, yeah, that guy's got some character. Actually, one of your English titled people did.
There you go again.
One of those people from the country that you formerly lived in.
Thank you.
He was going to be king, and he had it all given to him, and he decided he'd say no to it, and he went off with a divorced American wife.
Edward and Mrs. Simpson.
Wait a sec. Divorced. She can't be a wife if she's divorced. An ex-wife, divorced American, and he gave it all up. He gave up the throne to go with Mrs. Simpson. Love. And, do you think he was admired for that?
No, he was
vilified.
Disliked immensely. Oh, there's a whole story there for sure, because of what was happening around that time with Hitler coming up and his association that he had with Hitler. There's a lot more to it than what meets the eye. And he was groomed for the job, but it went to George V, because he left. And there's other reasons to it. So, yeah, that's a sacrifice for sure. So he sacrificed King of England and all the trappings that came with it for Mrs. Simpson. Very interesting.
Well, it is interesting indeed. Now, I'm thinking about, there's a scripture that goes along the line something like this. Death works in us so that life works in you. Death works in us so that life works in you. So in other words, to paraphrase, whenever somebody gives up something for a genuine good purpose, it produces life in somebody else or somewhere else. Say, for example, I say, all right, I'm going to be a saint. I'm going to give up my life and I'm going to serve the poor. And I give up all my opportunities for fame and fortune and I live poor and I live amongst those that have nothing and I serve them. So I lose something, that's death working in me, and they receive the life that I can give them through my giving of time and effort.
Self-sacrificing people, a person who sacrifices themselves, like Edward. So they're called an altruist. The act itself is called altruism, meaning that they put the needs of others before their own. So he put the need of Mrs. Simpson in front of the nation.
Well, did he? Like you said, there was more to that story than was on the surface, and there was politics to play. And he was a Nazi fascist sympathiser.
Well, there was talk.
Which means he was possibly given the nod and said, look, sorry, old chap, you are unsuitable for the throne.
Well, we never know entirely. But this is where it comes to, so whether he sacrificed it all or he sacrificed it for one person. I mean, they can be called selfless, like I said, or self-sacrificing, benevolent, charitable, or a martyr.
Indeed. Actually, I have a question, seeing as we're into this deep topic. Can you recall any periods in your life when you've had to sacrifice?
Yes, there's a couple. Of course, I would be thinking it because it's been on my mind for a while. I'm thinking,
well, are you free to share it?
Oh, a couple, yeah. One, moving to Australia, so 32 years ago. So I sort of sacrificed family. I come from a large family. Not that we were very close, but I still sacrificed a large part of my family, which I suppose a lot of people would go, well, that wasn't a bad thing. Friends. I left behind a fair amount of friends, a lot of school friends, a lot of close friends. Of course, then we couldn't keep contact via Zoom or whatever, so we had to write letters. So that was interesting. There's no internet then, so that was a bit crazy. I also sacrificed work contracts. I had a massive contract that I won, and it would have really set us up for a long time. So yeah, there were a couple of things there that I sacrificed moving to Australia, which I don't regret. And I never really looked at them as a sacrifice. Only this subject has made me aware of, well, maybe you did. You did sacrifice your family, your friends, and your work, if the word means that to you. I think, honestly, probably, yes, I did sacrifice. But for me, for my wife and my children, which has flourished, but it could have gone the other way.
I think most parents sacrifice time, and in some cases, most definitely time more than anything. And of course, time is money. If you do not have children, you've got more time for yourself, and whatever you earn, you can spend on yourself.
But that's choice, though, as well. You don't have to have children.
Yes, it is, definitely, but isn't sacrifice a choice?
I don't think it is. I think the choice is there for you to make.
Yeah, but like going back again to my fictional scenario, Duke Alfred rather decides to forego all his inheritances and go and be with Elizabeth. So that's a choice. And also, if I decide to be another Mahatma Gandhi and give up my life of privilege and go and serve the poor, that's a choice again.
Would you want to be a person known to sacrifice? Keith sacrificed this, Keith sacrificed that, or worse, I sacrificed this, I sacrificed that.
Well, this is an interesting little twist. So you're saying that some people would want to be seen to be sacrificing themselves so that they can be admired by people.
Absolutely, because that's the annoying thing that I wanted to talk about as well, where they point the finger. I sacrificed this for you, and I sacrificed that. I could have done this, I could have done that. And I was thinking to myself, well, why didn't you?
Actually, I know a guy who loves to say that, I love to help people. And he says,
I know this fella.
And he says it with a little pause, with a little sort of soft smile on the side of his face. And the pause is designed for you to come in and compliment him. But when it comes down to pressure being put upon him, he caves in and he just shows selfish tendencies. He doesn't help people at all, but he makes a lot of noise about it. So yeah, I guess some people want to be seen to be those who are noble in giving their time, sacrificing their time and effort and even their money so that they can be admired. So it can be something that's not from a pure motive.
And that's the thing. And the same as you get what's happening in Ukraine and the wars that are going around, they're sacrificing their citizens for their freedom, for their democracy. So that opens up.
Or are they? Or are they rich or privileged rulers who are sacrificing their common people so that they can get more privilege and riches?
So there we are. So there's always the opposite.
You can sacrifice other people's lives and not your own. I don't like wars.
I'm with you.
They're run by rich people.
But sacrifice.
F-word them.
Sacrifice. It irks me when people say it. I sacrificed it. And I'm thinking to myself, but have you? Mm-hmm. It's like I sacrifice my urges that I want to go out and get off my head smoking dope. Not really, but, it's an urge. So I've sacrificed that for who? Myself or for others? It's the word, sacrifice.
Well, speaking of dope, I've got a friend years ago that was heavily involved in smoking dope, and as was his gang of mates that he was living with. And the police raided the premises. So all of them were in trouble. And this one guy stood up and said, no, the other guys weren't doing that. All of the dope in here at the moment, all of the weed, all the grass in here is mine. And he took the blame, which gave him a criminal record. Now, he didn't go to jail, but he sacrificed his reputation and his clean criminal record to protect his friends. Now, that is something I can admire.
Well, he just took a hit for the team.
Well, absolutely. And that is a sacrifice. You took a hit for the team. And I don't know if too many people can remember that. And I think a lot of people who were in line to be going down the same as what he did would have been quite happy that he did it. I'm not sure how many people came back and said thank you or gave him a pat on the back. But I tell you what, if you took that hit for me, I'd be grateful and I wouldn't forget it.
But like I put down here, life is full of instances where we all observe self-sacrifice. Where have you last seen that happen around you?
Where have I last seen somebody or myself do self-sacrifice? I'd have to think quite hard about that, Lee.
Yeah, it's there, but it's not there. Mm-hmm. And if we label it sacrifice, it says it's a compelling and profound human trait.
Well, I think we all do, now that you're pressing me. The sacrifice doesn't have to be big and it doesn't have to be noble. It could be in a relationship, you are putting a surfboard on top of your car, you're about to go out for a surf because you know the waves are there, and your partner, your missus, or somebody who's importantly connected to you comes up to you and says, look, Keith, I need such and such and such and such. Can you go and do that for me? It's urgent. And you know in fulfilling their request, you won't get to the surf. And surf changes quickly. Sometimes surf conditions can change within 3 or 4 hours due to wind and tide and the size of the swell increasing or dropping. So you really have to go surfing when the waves are there. So if somebody comes along to you and says, look, this is an urgent situation. I need your help. You're the only person who can help me. Can you please do it? And you know it's going to take 4 hours. And good chance when you get there to the surf afterwards, it's gone. The waves are gone. That's a little sacrifice if you say yes.
A little sacrifice.
So, yeah, it doesn't have to be big and noble. You're not going to get your Gandhi sainthood out of it.
or to be a martyr.
But so when you say to me, when was the last time I've seen people do active sacrifice? Well, I guess most of us are doing it often. It's in the course of life.
Well, I look at it down to the fact that, like I was saying, from a soldier laying down his life or children giving up their time to look after their aging parents where they have their own wants and desires, I think it's a lot of courage and love in that. So
absolutely love.
So for me, sacrifice is truly an act of love and courage. That's what I came to at the end.
Yeah, okay, I'll agree with that entirely. I think that's a wonderful wrap up and definition.
But thanks for listening, Molly. I've got it off my chest now. I feel so much better.
Excellent.
And now I'm going to sacrifice the rest of my time and say, Molly, I'll leave you the last word.
So it is a sacrifice for you to let me have the last word, is it, Lee?
Every week. It's been a sacrifice. No, not at all. Of course not.
Well, I'll tell you what.
You know it.
I'm going to turn the tables. Over to you, big fella. You say goodbye today.
Well, Keith, thank you very much. Thank you to all our listeners that have tuned in today. We ask you to subscribe, share, and pass on the thoughts of sacrifice. We are also on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube / Don't Get Me Started 2024, we look forward to being with you next week. Have a great week. Hopefully we'll be here after Cyclone Alfred. And Keith would like just to say one more thing.
Yes, you mentioned YouTube, and we are up on YouTube, but the video is not there yet. It's just audio, but the video is coming because we are expanding. Don't Get Me Started, Surftown, all here in DGMS Studio is growing, expanding. Thanks. Goodbye. See you next week.
See, he had to have the last word. And it's goodbye from me.
Hooroo from me.